Golden Freddy was never frightening in the same way all the other animatronics were, and that difference is easy to miss now that the series has grown as large and complicated as it has. When players talk about him today, they usually talk in terms of lore, identity, or importance to that lore, but early on, none of that really mattered. What mattered was how you encountered him, and how that felt in the moment. More specifically, how little sense that moment really made. When Golden Freddy appeared in the early games, it really didn't feel like you had triggered an enemy encounter or failed the night. There wasn't a sense that you even made a mistake. You see, there isn't a clear way to trigger Golden Freddy, excluding Ultimate Custom Nights. You can close the doors, open the doors repeatedly, flip up and down the cameras, check all the cameras non-stop, or just sit there and do nothing. Nothing will inherently trigger him. The game itself is, as far as we know, random on how it's triggered. According to the FNAF Wiki, the game intended to have a 1 in 100,000 chance of him appearing when clicking Cam 2B. The important part of this is, nothing you do clearly causes him to appear. And because of that, it felt like the game itself had done something wrong. The experience didn't follow the logic you'd just spent hours learning, especially for new players. Your brain didn't know how to process it, and you weren't reacting to danger as so much you were reacting to uncertainty. That uncertainty did a lot of the hard work. You didn't know why Golden Freddy was there, whether he could hurt you, or if he even existed the same way that the other animatronics did. Sometimes he appeared and the game ended, and other times he appeared and vanished without any consequence. There wasn't a reliable pattern. And because there wasn't a pattern, many of us had questions. Quite a lot of them. For a long time, Golden Freddy lived in that space where players weren't entirely sure if they were supposed to be seeing him at all. Some people never encountered him, and others only saw him only once. That rarity mattered more than it might seem, because it meant Golden Freddy wasn't something you anticipated. He was something that interrupted you without warning, and interruptions are far more unsettling than threats you can anticipate. What made that even more powerful was what happened outside the game. Players went online trying to prove he existed at all. YouTube was full of guides on how to deal with Golden Freddy because there was no reliable way to summon him. Instead, it became kind of a digital folklore. Some people believed he was a glitch, others thought he was a cut content for a hoax. The uncertainty spilled into that real world, reinforcing the idea that Golden Freddy wasn't rare, but accidental. As the series grew and the community expanded, that sense of interruption slowly started to disappear. Information became easier to find and appearances became easier to document. What once felt like a strange anomaly gradually became something more recognizable. When you know what you're looking at, your brain stops treating it as a problem and starts treating it as just another thing you can observe. The more often Golden Freddy appeared and the more information the player had about him, the harder it became to see him as something that just didn't belong. He began to feel like part of the system rather than a disruption of it. And once that happened, the tension he created started to drain away. At some point, Golden Freddy stopped being an unexplained presence and started being treated as a character with a role to play. He became important and held meaning in the game. While those things add depth to the story, they also add clarity and comfort. As answers accumulated, the experience of seeing Golden Freddy changed. Instead of asking whether the game had broken its own rules, players began asking what the appearance was meant to represent. The focus shifted from unease to interpretation, and interpretation is a very different emotional process. The community wasn't sitting there uncomfortable anymore. They were trying to actively solve something. And unfortunately, that's where the fear quietly left. Horror depends on distance. The moment you feel like you understand what something is doing and why it exists, it stops having the same effect on you. Golden Freddy didn't lose his power because he appeared more often, because his design changed, because the series went on too long or gotten too bright. He lost his power because he started to become familiar within the Five Nights at Freddy's community. Eventually, Golden Freddy's appearance started to function less as a moment of unease and more as a narrative signal. They pointed towards answers instead of away from them, and they became part of the language of the story rather than a disruption of it. While that made the lore richer, it also made the experience safer. Some elements of horror are the strongest when they are not fully understood. Not because the answers don't exist, but because they're never placed directly in front of the audience. Golden Freddy didn't suffer from being underdeveloped. He certainly had a backstory and plenty of lore. However, he suffered from being given too much space. Early on, seeing him felt like stumbling into something you weren't meant to find. Over time, that faded, replaced by familiarity and understanding. Rarity gave him power, but the repetition and explanation took that away. That doesn't make Golden Freddy a failure, but it does make him an example of how fragile horror can be once the mystery of a character disappears. With the progression of the Five Nights at Freddy's games over the years, we have seen more and more become explained, leaving from the classic jump scare horror genre that kept us playing the games in the first place, to what now sometimes feels like a new game with a FNAF-style skin over the gameplay. Regardless, if you like these newer games or not, it's hard to deny that the series and characters are the same, and seeing the silver lining in things, that may not be entirely bad. The series has grown into a media empire, and the way I look at it, if something doesn't grow, it dies. And who knows, maybe someday we'll have another Golden Freddy-like character again, just in a new format. Thank you for watching, and until next time, maybe some things are better left unexplained.